Can you tell us who you are and when and where you were born?
I'm Marilynn Sewell, and I was born in Markdale, Ontario in 1957.
And what county were you a member of in your junior farmer years?
I was lucky. I was a member in Grey County, University of Guelph, and Durham East, and Brant.
How did you first get involved in junior farmers or hear about junior farmers?
It was in my blood. My dad was a junior farmer member and went to the United Kingdom in 1951 on a judging competition. So my claim to fame as a kid growing up was my dad shook hands with the Queen because he went to represent Ontario in a junior farmer judging competition. So I just always knew about junior farmers. It was just something that was there, and when I was old enough to finally join, then I did. I just knew that's what I was going to do, and that was how I started.
So you joined on your own? No one recruited you?
No. I don't remember anybody particular asking me, but I was waiting till I was old enough. I think it was 15. So.
And how did you go about joining?
I probably just went to a function, went to a meeting whenever it was time to go, and signed up. There was my local community, Rockland, was not very far away, and I know a lot of kids that were involved in junior farmers and 4-H, so it was just a natural extension.
And how many other clubs were there in Grey County at the time?
At that time, there was probably 7 or 8 different ones, and Grey County was very strong. I was very fortunate to be involved in a time when there was thousands in the membership list across the province, and it was a strong county. So people could get involved at the club level or the county level and still have lots to do before ever venturing off to a provincial level or a zone level even.
How many members were there in Grey County at the time?
Oh, I have no idea. But each club would have 20 to 40 kids in it, so it was pretty substantial. We were never Middlesex. Middlesex was the big county at that time, but we were strong.
Okay. And in your club level, what type of things in Rockland did you do for fun or in the community?
Well, I remember doing things on a more of a county basis. We got involved in doing one-act plays that we did before many of the local fall fairs had their opening night, and the junior farmers in Grey County would present this play, and I think we did that 2 or 3 years, and it was a lot of fun. We also did, I remember we were always trying to raise money, so there'd be car washes and things like that. Dances at that time were a great way to make money, and we would have a lot of dances. And we didn't get into sponsorship that much as the years went by. We weren't as keen of looking for community sponsorship, but self-help and community betterment. So whatever there was we could do, we tried to do.
And you got active pretty early on in Rockland, did you not?
I did. I was president, I think, by the time I was 16, so I hadn't had many years under my belt. I'd had a lot of 4-H experience, though, so I was naturally drawn to the leadership, the president, that kind of thing, and learned how to run a meeting. Again, because I watched my dad run a meeting and knew how that was important, and you'd hear them talk about, oh, that person knew how to run a meeting, so you knew that was an important thing to do. You didn't really know what it meant, but I was probably, the club was at a bit of a turning point, like many clubs are, and I thought, well, I don't have a lot of experience, but I really want to do this, and I got to be president when I was fairly young. And I remember distinctly coming home and telling Mom and Dad, I was really excited, I got to be president. The first thing they said, well, how are you going to get to the meetings, and how are you going to get to all these things? Wish you could have been happy, but so I was lucky. I remember going and talking to some of the people in the club and saying, well, I know at the time I said I will do it, but someone else has to make sure I can get there. And they did. People were great. We'd do a lot of carpooling. There's lots of people that had cars that I couldn't, and so it wasn't ever a problem.
So from there, did you get more active in the county level then?
In the county level, we did. We had There was all sorts. There was the county work we had to do. We would do pancake breakfasts in Owen Sound. That was something that was a big thing. Again, doing broom ball tournaments or county awards, county sporting events, that kind of thing. Just, you know, we had things that were always done, and you know, I guess we probably tried to do something new every once in a while too. But I wouldn't have been involved in the county level very long before I went to university. But I know that I tried to pack as much in as I could in those years in the county.
And from there, you went on to the University of Guelph Junior Farmers.
I did. One of the reasons I went to the University of Guelph was because they had a strong junior farmer club. And I had been, just prior to going to university, I'd been to provincial leadership camp for 4-H and met a lot of people who would be going to Guelph. And there was the newsletter, The Enthusiast at the time, was the magazine, and you would just, you know, look for anybody's name that you knew, and of course you knew that there was a junior farmers in Guelph, and I would know that from being involved in provincial conferences, provincial events from my Grey County days, and so it was pretty much a given that I would go to Guelph, and that was one of the big reasons, because I knew there was a junior farmer club, and you know, we all choose things for various things, but that was again, it was just the chance to meet similar people with like interests, and really, even though we were pretty insular in doing things around the university, we did go to provincial events, and I remember we had a choir. We went to Sing Swing. We did different things like that, but it was really great. I was president of the University of Guelph at one point, and I know there are just lots of really good people I met.
And from there you went to Durham East Junior Farmers?
Well, then I started working, and I moved to the Oshawa area and became involved in the junior farmers in that area. It was kind of a given, I think. Anybody that had any kind of junior farmer experience, no matter where you moved, that was your way to meet people. That was your social outlet. And one of my friends from high school had also moved to that area, and so we got involved there, and of course that would have been a lot of I became provincial director in that area, and that's where I became more involved on the provincial level. But it was a way of meeting people that you knew had similar outlooks and similar ideas, and we traveled to provincial directors meetings together with different groups of people, and this was way before the time of email, and I don't even know if we had fax back at that point, but so everything was done by mail or by telephone, and there wasn't any great long distance rates at that time either, but so there was a lot of, like, that was a big deal. That was really social to have the drive together and, you know, solve the problems of the world as we saw them at that point in time, and we took the meetings very seriously. The provincial directors meetings were really serious. Now, there was lots of fun, and there was lots of activities involved with them and that, but we took that really seriously. We took our finances seriously, and you know, who was going to represent us on various things, and our organization, and that. It was, we were there to work, but of course it was in the spirit of being around people you just love to be around.
What were some of the main topics that kept coming up at the PD meetings for discussion?
Oh, I'd have to think, but we would probably be talking a lot about finances. Probably would be one thing we would be talking about. What kind of events we were going to have. At that point in time, we still had support from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and they provided the secretary-treasurer position, which was vital. We didn't realize it at the time how vital it was, but that, and there was probably some funding that went along with it too. So the organizational glue was what it provided, and the encouragement and seeking out people. But we did the organizing of provincial events, so different committees had different responsibilities. One of the committees that I was involved on was I think we called it Travel and Hospitality. but that was to ensure that all the delegates that were coming from other countries to Ontario on an annual basis had programs and had events and were hosted properly and things like that. So that was a lot of one of the groups that I remember being on specifically.
Can you talk about how the committees on the provincial board worked as a whole, and how they interacted with the grassroots and with the provincial executive?
Well, at the provincial level, we had at that time, I can't remember all the committees, but there would be one on travel. There'd be probably a provincial events committee. There would be the executive. There would be communications. Might have been a membership committee or a leadership committee or something like that. I can't really remember. But we would have our committee meetings in between provincial director meetings, and we would travel for 2 or 3 hours to get to a meeting together. Like, that was, again, before teleconferencing, but then we didn't really want to teleconference. We wanted to have the day to go and be together. And so then we'd bring our reports back to the provincial meeting and any of the decisions that had to be made on a provincial level. As a provincial director, your job was to communicate the events and ideas and policies back to your club level. So there was always, at every club meeting, there was a provincial director's report. If you had a county level, it would be reported back, and then those delegates would report back to their club. But in Durham, we just had the one club, and so that was a standing part of the agenda, is what's happening at the provincial level. We also had a zone structure too, so some people were able to be involved at the zone level, and that was primarily to have sporting events. That was the basis for moving on to provincial levels. But we'd have different zone activities, and again, people could get involved at that level. Not everybody had the luxury of being able to travel to provincial events. I worked in a job where I had freedom in my weekends, but a lot of the kids, especially if you were full-time employed on your farm, your parents' farm, or your farm, that meant getting somebody to do the chores for you. And a lot of people, I'm sure, would not have been able to do the things they did if they hadn't had the support at home to do it. Because once you started to get involved, there was just more and more things to do, more you wanted to do, and it took a lot of time, but it never felt like it was hard work.
Now, while you were on the board, you moved up to be on the executive, did you not?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I took 2 runs at being provincial president as well.
Did
you? Yes. I was in a time when, luckily for the organization, we had strong leadership, and each time there would be at least 6 candidates running for president. And I tried twice, and was happy to support the people that got in on both occasions. I was disappointed. I really wanted it, but you can only show your passion and do what you can. I probably didn't do a lot of. I don't think any of us did a lot of politicking when it came to who was going to vote for us or things like that. But I guess the idealism of youth, you figure you put your ideas out and people will choose. And I was thrilled to work with the people that I did. Our executives were always really strong, really capable people, and friends to this day.
Now, how is one, in your time on the board, how did one become on the executive? Become a member of it?
Well, I think we ran to be on the executive. I think it was an election.
Did you run for your zone, or was there specific, like now they have specific executive portfolios?
I think that you had to be a zone director, and it's 7 zones, and each zone director became part of the executive, if I recall. I think that's how it worked. So yes, I had to be elected in Durham East, and then elected for zone I can't even remember what zone we were. Zone 2, I think, maybe 2. And then as the Zone 2 rep, then I was on the executive.
Who were the presidents that you served with while you were on executive?
Oh, Jim Wirt from Stormont County, Stuart Budd, and he represented Norfolk County. Meredith Brophy was from Ottawa Carleton. I don't think I was on the executive with Doug Peart, but Doug Murphy, I was definitely on the executive from Haldimand County.
What kind of presidents were they, and what did they bring to junior farmers?
Oh, their passion. Their passion. Each of them were different in their own way. They just believed so strongly in the organization. We all did. We all believed, and we all wanted to see other people benefit, because we knew, even at that age personally, that we had benefited so much from traveling across the province, to meeting people in every corner of the province, to traveling, to being selected, going through selection processes, learning at the time, but learning how to interview, how to organize. We just knew how to organize anything because we just did it so often. And so when you left the world of junior farmers, you didn't realize that everybody hadn't had that experience, and you ran into people that didn't know how to organize and program planning, and it was just second nature to us because we just knew how to do good things, how to put on good events. The history of the organization was important to us as far as keeping it alive, and seeing that it was a viable force, and that the name was a good name. We've always struggled with the name change. That would always be a topic of discussion. Oh, should we change the name from Junior Farmers? Junior Farmers sounds like we're all just farming. I shouldn't say just, but that was the connotation. We're more than farming, and several of us aren't farmers and won't be farmers. But it came back every time that there was just too much richness in the heritage and too much history to change it. We toyed with Rural Youth of Ontario thinking of that, but it just didn't. You couldn't sing that song. The Junior Farmers had a song. I can't imagine singing something that wasn't the Junior Farmers song. So, but I'm sure they still talk about that. But that would come up every so often. That would be the big thing. Are we going to change the name? And we never did.
Who were the other people that were a great influence on you that were part of the board with you?
I think part of the board, I think they all were. I think we all looked around the room and just realized what a rare, wonderful opportunity we were having to be with people who cared, people who had skills, people who were challenging each other's ideas, people who were fun to be with. The people I've mentioned, I think of them. I think of Rosemary Peer, who was a great friend and a great co-PD. She was a PD from another county at that time, Wentworth, I believe, Hamilton Wentworth. So, we just, I think we all influenced each other by what we did. And as far as, I can't think of anybody in particular, but I can think of people who held that secretary-treasurer position, who made enormous differences. Carm Hamilton has the amazing ability to remember people's names. And being a little kid from Grey County, seeing him at a 4-H event at the Royal or something like that, and then the next time he sees you, he calls you your name, blew me away. And I'm thinking, you've seen thousands of kids. How do you remember me? And just that, I just took that as such a great skill to have. I think of Ken Knox followed him, and Ken Knox had great inspirational gift to people. Rod Stork had that position for a while, a short period of time, and then I got to work with Rod a couple of different times in my career as we crossed paths after that. Had a great passion, and Janet Horner, Janet Whitehead, she would have been, or is still, someone who I really admire and respect for being an innovator and truly ahead of the curve in almost everything she's ever done. And she guided junior farmers in a way too that we probably didn't have a clue. She was guiding us and getting us ready for the next step. And Doug Wagner was another really influential kind of person. I'm probably leaving somebody out, but those, if I was thinking of who did I admire and respect, it would have been those people.
Was Nancy Larmer around?
She was, yes. How could I forget Nancy? Nancy, yes. Nancy was our secretary treasurer at when I was on the executive towards the end. Hal Thompson was there for a short period of time. Hal Thompson, I think, was the one with Doug Peart that had the vision that we could have our provincial conference in Thunder Bay. And Thunder Bay, like most people didn't have a clue where Thunder Bay was. They knew it was up north. But we did it. We flew to Thunder Bay to have a provincial conference. And that was just remarkable to think that we could raise money to do that. And we would go and have the same kind of quality event. And that was a big eye-opener to know that we could start having things other places than Toronto as well. And that's when we started moving to other things. But yeah, Hal Thompson, Thunder Bay. Who would have thought? But that was a great eye-opener.
And how did that unfold?
I believe that I think Doug Peart was the president at that time. Either him or Meredith Brophy, and they just said, okay, this is when we're going to have it. It would have been brought to the board as a decision, and we went with it. And so clubs probably did their own fundraising, how to get there, and so that was a project all year. Like, we knew about it, at least a year in advance that's what we were going to be doing. And I don't know if I was on the planning committee for that one. I was on a planning committee with Doug Murphy. I can't remember if that was the one or not. But we just did it.
What other provincial events occurred when your time on the board?
Sing Swing was a big one. And I'm not sure if we introduced that or not, but that was a competition in the end of November that was everything from individual soloists to choirs to dance competitions, square dancing. I was, when I moved to Brant County, when I married and moved to Brant County, we did a square dancing competition and was able to get second place, so that was pretty cool. So that was one of the big events that was hosted around the province. Drama Fest, I think that's what it was called. That was a series of one-act plays and other kinds of competitions that we had. And we did sort of a reach for the top quiz type event there. The other provincial events, there was always winter games and summer games and March conference. March conference was a big deal. Not only was it the conference where we had themes and speakers and workshops, but it was where trips were announced. And there was a trip to the United Kingdom at that time, trip to Australia, New Zealand. One of the things that we introduced during my time on the board, I don't know if it's when I was executive or not, was we sent people to Russia. And I remember being part of the interview team to select the people that went to Russia. So, like, the world just was there. And that's the whole thing about junior farmers to me, was that it helped kids like me who grew up on a farm in a small rural community move, in my case, from RR to Markdale to the rest of the world. And I did. I traveled to Washington, D.C. I traveled to the United Kingdom through junior farmers. I did travel to PEI through 4-H. I was able to host people from other provinces. So the fact that I was able to get so much personal experience was a great reward, but a huge honor, because I was the first second generation person to travel to the United Kingdom. My dad went in 1951, and then I went in 1979, and that was a really big deal for us. Maybe it wasn't for everybody else, but it was something that, that generational thing, and it certainly was repeated after that. And we had a lot in Junior Farmers during my time, people that were presidents or certainly on the board whose parents had been as well. So that was coming through, and that people took a lot of pleasure in that.
Can you talk about the trip to Indiana, what that was about?
1976, it was the American Bicentennial. And we were branching out to try to link up to other organizations similar. And that was the Indiana Rural Youth Exchange. And we were one of the first few exchange people that went there, the exchanges that happened. And I have remained lifelong friends with those people. They were at my wedding. I wasn't able to get to their wedding because that was many years ago, but I visited with them several times. It was a lifelong experience, and it was, for me, it was a chance to have a sense of what was it like to live in the United States, rural USA, and they talked about things differently, but we were all pretty much the same.
How long was the exchange?
Oh, it was just 2 weeks, I think. Stayed with two different families, one in the north of Indiana, one in the south. But I went to the Indiana State Fair, and it was a great fair. We have great fairs here in Ontario, but just this whole idea of a state fair was something that was really neat. And it was just again, caring people that were involved, and for them it was a chance to have programs and events for young people in rural, because we didn't have the opportunity to do sports or do other kinds of things. Farm kids didn't do Girl Guides or Boy Scouts, and we didn't do, you did things with your church perhaps, but you just didn't do those things. So when you got to be old enough to be in 4-H, that was the big thing, and then Junior Farmers after that, often hand in hand.
What was your trip to Washington you mentioned?
Washington was the National Future Farmers of America convention, and that was so much fun. That was, if you want a raw American experience, that was it. And another fellow, Grant McMurtry, and I went down representing Ontario, and we hooked up with the other folks there was people there from United Kingdom that were delegates to this convention, and they had people all over the United States, had Future Farmers of America clubs, and they were far more agriculturally oriented, and they were affiliated quite strongly with the school system, so people had a chance to be greatly supported through that system. But we were the Canadian delegation, so it was all of a sudden you realize that you have to know things about Canada that you thought you did and you hope you did. But again, it was a tremendous experience to be touring things in Washington State, Washington D.C., and being with people from all over the United States. Again, it was just another level of experience and exposure, and I can't believe I'm really doing this representing Ontario Junior Farmers. It just a great opportunity.
Now, your final trip you mentioned, the big one, your trip to United Kingdom. Can you touch on that? And what was done on that?
What was done on that? That was 1979, and we were hosted in 4 different places in Scotland and England and Northern Ireland. And that was, there's 4 other people that went with me. Again, you never learn so much about a place that you do the first few days that you're away. Everything's different. Everything, from how they talk to what they eat and when they eat it, and the mail delivery and the buses, and everything's different. And that was quite an experience. quite an experience. I've kept in touch with the one lady from, or girl from Scotland. The other places, not so much. Again, you have to kind of realize that not every experience you have is going to be the best experience of your life, but you're going to learn something from it, and you're going to learn how other people live. I stayed in one of the places in England. It was with a lord and lady, and my first impression of that was that they would be very wealthy, but they weren't. That was a title that they had for being landowners. But just to understand a different system, and what they did that was fun may not necessarily be the things that I thought was fun. The one fellow I stayed with in England, I remember we went to a car race. I thought, we're just sitting here watching cars go round and round, and I couldn't find any benefit in that. But it was just, I wanted to do that personally, to have the same experience. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I saw some of the same stuff my dad did when he was in Aberdeen. He didn't have very many pictures, but he had a few, and I think it was important for me to get out to that part. And being in Northern Ireland, that wasn't that much longer. There was still lots of unrest going on, so it was quite an experience. And I stayed with three of the 4 places I stayed were with gentlemen, young fellows. So that was a big change for me. I had no brothers growing up, and so there was no girls in these households where I stayed. So that was kind of interesting.
Can you talk about some of the...
Oh, can I just talk about the Royal Highland Show?
Oh, sure.
Yes, I remember going to that, and we saw Princess Anne. Because part of what we did, like, some of these things are so hokey when you think about it now, but if you want a trip, you got to wear the Ontario tartan. And you had, for ladies, you had a skirt, a blazer, and a vest made out of this Ontario tartan, was mostly green. And the gentleman had a vest and a jacket. That only people that got that were people that traveled outside of the province. So to have the tartan jacket it's like the green jacket in golf or whatever that is. But those are the only people that ever got that. So we were we were standing, the 4 of us together at the Highland Show, and Princess Anne came through, and of course we're standing all there in our our Ontario tartan, and she came by, and we spoke to her, and she said, "Well, you're kind of a hard group to miss." So we, I guess, looked a bit gaudy maybe, but that was a big, as I think about that was impressive that we got that. And people, after I went, they got the idea, which is a great idea, to do some personal traveling afterwards. But at that time, the trip was still sponsored by the Ministry of Agriculture, and so there was lots of other people making decisions, and it wasn't to be sightseeing everywhere else. It was very defined.
Is there other experiences you had in Junior Farmers that perhaps really stand out in your mind as this could only happen at Junior Farmers that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, growing up, you have nothing really to compare it to. But I think the fact that to this day, I know people all across Ontario. I'm lucky I work in agriculture, so I run across some of the same people, have all my life, so I've been able to stay in touch with them through different ways. And I see them in leadership positions. I see them, whether it's locally or provincially, I've run across them. And I think that the grounding that we got in our responsibility to our communities was really important. The value of agriculture was very important. And I think the fact that really you can make a difference. We had different themes at junior farmer camps or conferences or events. 2 that stand out is act enthusiastic and you'll be enthusiastic. That is I think it's a great motto. And one of the other things that I remember, if I think about it personally, if it is to be, it's up to me. And I think I can attribute some of the success that I've had as an initiator of other things in my life to that knowledge that, yes, we can do that. Or it's not going to happen unless we do it. And if I've been able to contribute back to the communities that I've been involved in because I understand some responsibility, then I've taken a lot away from junior farmers. But I think, I'm going to get emotional. Just the self-esteem and the knowing that you can be good at something. You don't have to be the high school jock. You don't have to be the cheerleader. That leadership is a very valuable skill, and leadership is really important. And just to think about what a difference that makes, and you don't have to be the special person. You don't have to win the trip, so you don't have to get the awards. Winning's great. But, I had to learn how to lose. I had to learn how to lose something I really wanted. And wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last. And I think all those personal skills that you don't realize you're developing is what I take back.
And that leads us to the next question, but you've covered a lot of it, is how did junior farmers change you as a person? Is there anything else you haven't touched on that this is how junior farmers affected me and made me who I am today? Or have we covered it?
I think the fact that junior farmers was the vehicle to open the world to me. It's probably open the world, expose me to people, introduce me to wonderful people. I think those are the things that I take on a personal level.
How much did membership cost? Do you remember?
Oh, it was probably like $15 or something like that. It never was very much.
How many members in the province were there?
Oh, I remember one time looking at an annual report. I think we had 7,000 at one point. Bart Johnson might have been the president at that time. Bart Johnson or Bill Emmett or Bruce Saunders. Those guys.
Yeah. And how was the membership? How was that flowing?
During the time that I was involved, we were at a high. We were lucky. Yeah, we were able to have 6,000-7,000 members, probably for most of the time that I was involved, if I recall.
And what were the big counties?
Middlesex was a big county. Oxford, Lambton was a big one. Grey, Bruce, Huron. Those were the big ones.
What would you like to be remembered as for your time on the board? How would you like to be remembered as?
I think for someone who was willing to work hard, was willing to speak, stand up, voice opinions, not be afraid to be one of the first people to stand up. I think that's something that I've taken away. I'd like to be remembered for that.
Did you go to leadership camp?
I did.
Which year?
Well, actually, I went on staff in the later years. I'm trying to remember, did I go to junior farmer leadership camp? Of course I did. I went to 4-H leadership camp, which is very similar programming. But leadership camp for people was life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. And again, it was intensive self-confidence boosting, confidence building, esteem building, being able to work with others, being able to go into a place where not very many people knew you and you could have the opportunity to be who you wanted to be. And I think for a lot of people, they stretched outside their comfort zone to do that.
And what process was that to help that, to facilitate that?
Well, there was daily challenges, there was team building inside of your ship. That's how we were organized, or clans. You had to be creative in doing the things you were responsible for, whether it was Vespers or leading some program during the day or some activity. I think it just didn't leave room for anybody to hide. Everybody had to be involved. And if you didn't start coming out of your shell, you were brought out. Then nobody was left behind. Nobody was left to do that.
Is there any other stories that I haven't asked in the different classifications that I have asked in these questions that you feel, would be good stories to tell and add to the whole junior farmer experience that you had?
I think one of the things that was starting to happen as I was finishing my time was the big push to have a provincial charity and raise money at a provincial March conference for some charity. And we continued to outdo ourselves. It would be, I can't remember them, but it might have been the Diabetics Association, Canadian Diabetes or something like that, or there was a lot of different charities. And we would raise thousands of dollars. And it would be locally, and it would be through things at the actual March conference. And I think that really was a turning point to for junior farmers to be known for a group that was beyond themselves. And we picked all kinds of different charities and raised a lot of money. So I think for people who are involved in that, if they're involved in any kind of community organization going forward, knowing that that's possible and not be discouraged and try something wild and crazy, because that's what Junior Farmers was about. The opportunity to try something, and most of the times it went really well. Sometimes there would be things that kind of flopped, but I think that safe place to try things made a big difference.
This question I'm going to ask, and this leads to a lot of different things you've said throughout this interview. But I'm just going to ask to see if it could all get put together and then some. In your opinion, what is or what was the importance of junior farmers in Ontario?
Junior farmers, I was fascinated to always learn that it started by helping to teach people about agriculture, and those how important that was, that whole extension, and those valuable roots. But as society changed, as people were able to get education more freely and easily, the things that we did change. But self-help and community betterment has never changed. And I think that building great leaders, building strong citizens to serve rural Ontario, but to serve any part of Ontario, is the legacy that Junior Farmers leaves for this province.
What have you done with yourself since leading Junior Farmers?
Oh, it's a lifetime ago. It's a lifetime ago. I have worked in agriculture all my life. I've been very fortunate that way, working with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs for many, many years. I've been involved in my community through our church, through 4-H, introducing my children to 4-H to make sure they got involved in that. Now, one of the joys of my personal life is being involved in the our Brant County Healthcare System Foundation, and that's the fundraising arm for our hospital system. And again, that's a tremendous learning experience to be to go into a brand new area. I don't know much about healthcare except we all receive healthcare, but to be involved in that is really fascinating. But I think I have carried my ability to speak, my ability to plan things and organize, my familiarity and my comfortableness in Ontario and in agriculture is all stemmed from being involved in Junior Farmers. So I'm really lucky, and I'm really lucky that I've been able to maintain friendships with many of those wonderful Junior Farmer friends, because that speaks volumes to me, because we've changed as our lives have gone on, but those are the kind of people that you want to stay in touch with.
And what are you doing now with your life right now?
Right now I'm still working full-time with the Farm Products Marketing Commission based in Guelph, and husband and I have 3 children, and so I do be involved in my church and in the Healthcare Foundation, and I try to do the odd thing for myself.
Okay. Last question. If you had the chance, what would you say to a Junior Farmer member or members today?
I would say never say no to an opportunity, because you don't know what you can do, and you don't know how great that opportunity is going to be. And don't think you can't do something, because you can. Whether it is stand up and give a speech, which terrifies people, or whether it's being part of a musical group, or being part of the baseball team, taking on the role of secretary. Don't ever say no, because we think we're always going to have those opportunities, and you do. But I can remember thinking one of the March conferences, oh, here's another session on goal setting. Oh my gosh, like we do that all the time. But you take for granted the fact that you have those opportunities and that you'll be with those people. And just try it. Never say no.
Thank you very much for this interview, Marilynn.
Wow, this has been awesome.